All right. Thank you for being patient. Did either of you have a question that you are itching to see with the 240, or did you just want to hear what I was going to review?
This is for 130, right? Or 240?
240.
It's not for 130.
No, the 130 review will be at 345.
Oh, okay, then I'll be back in 345 then. I was in
Oh, okay.
I was in 130. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Hello.
Hi.
Yeah, I would like to do question number 6. I need a little bit of explanation on the.
For the urine output?
Yep.
Okay,
Thank you.
no problem. Thank you for asking.
Mhm.
All right. So the trick to these urine output type questions is just knowing how to organize the question. And so one of the things that I've done over the past couple semesters is I've kind of come up with the strategy I'm following is I'm taking my actual urine output over the expected urine output times my replacement volume. So essentially what I've done is I've kind of, you can argue that this is dimensional analysis, it's ratio proportion, but if you follow if you follow this kind of formula here, you'll get this type of question right every single time. So what do I mean? So when you look at the question, it tells you for every 150 milliliters of urine output, replace with 40 milliliters. So you have your expected 150 milliliters of output and then your replacement volume of 40. So that's kind of like your ratio. And I'll show you an alternative way to think about that as well.
Mhm.
And then it says if your urine output is actually 600 milliliters, so that's where your actual urine output comes from. So there's a couple of ways you can set this up, but the way I have tended to explain it is I take my actual output over my expected output and then multiply by my replacement volume. And if I set it up that way every single time, I'm going to get the right answer every single time. And so for this one, give me 1 second. I have to pull up a calculator here. Nope, not a calendar. Calculator. 40 times 600 divided by 125 gives me a replacement volume of 125. I did the wrong number. Sorry. 40 times 600 divided by 150 gives me a replacement volume of 160 milliliters.
So in case if there is a difference in time, like this is every 4 hour.
The time doesn't matter.
Okay.
The time just tells you when they're collecting it. So if they missed an hour and they collected it at 5 hours or even at 6 hours, you're still going to take the actual output over the expected output times the replacement volume.
Okay. So in any condition like this type of question, actual urine, this formula will work, right?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, so for 240, really the only thing that's going to be new for your semester is actually there isn't much that's new. Everything's pretty much the same. You're going to have the heparin protocol, you're going to have your heparin and insulin infusions. You might have a few of these titration type questions Maybe. That may not be your class. No, I don't think you have any titration type questions other than understanding that technically anything that we're infusing is technically a titration. The only thing that's different, and I went over this on Tuesday, is the potential for a different, oh, I passed it already. It's called it's a different type of reconstitution question. So it's a different label and it looks like this. So I have been told that there's a potential that you might see a question that involves reconstitution on your test. I don't know if you actually will or will not. So don't quote me on it. I just don't know. All I know is that it's a potential, it's in the works to start to introduce it on a more regular basis for the semesters. And I've been told that potentially it would show up on the 4th semester test, but I don't know if it will. And really the only thing that's different or unique about this is the label itself. In this type of reconstitution, you have to look at the directions in the label in order to figure out or find the concentration or the strength of the medication. So what do I mean by that? Well, first of all, you should know at this point that if it's intramuscular, that it's an injectable and that it's going to be measured in milliliters for the most part. So you're going to use some sort of, needle to inject a liquid into the muscle, and that we measure that liquid with milliliters. Typically, you would see something like heparin might be listed at 10,000 units per milliliter. Or if we're talking about like an oral suspension, it's 125 milliliters per 5 ml. You have that relationship that's clearly spelled out. But on this type of reconstitution, what you're going to have is 500 milligrams listed and nothing about milliliters. So that's your clue that, first of all, you need to know the milliliters, but it's not listed there. And that's because the 500 milligrams is the powderized form of this medication. In this instance, it's Ancef. So what that tells you is you need to look over here at the label, at the instructions associated with the label, and you need to read through that to see where it says how to, or where it's going to say the concentration that's important for solving this equation. So you'll see where right down here where it says for intramuscular administration, add 2 milliliters of sterile water for injection, then to shake it well. Once you've added that 2 milliliters of sterile water, you get a total volume, approximate total of 2.2 milliliters. Now that's an important number because that's your total volume, but what's most important is this right here, where it says 225 milligrams per milliliter. That's what you're looking for. Once you've identified that 225 milligrams per milliliter, then that's what you use to solve your equation. And then here I did ordered over half. What did I have? I had 0.375 grams was my order. Sorry, that's what I meant to say. What was the order? I converted 0.375 grams to milligrams, so 375 milligrams, divided by the 225 milligrams times my quantity of 1 milliliter. And so I get a total of 1.7 milliliters. So that's really the only thing that's new. Everything else you've seen before, at least last semester in 230. You've seen the heparin protocol. You've seen the insulin and heparin infusions. But I'll let you take a look. If you have other questions, just let me know, and we'll work through them.
Okay.